This week, Aston Villa were linked once again with Athletic Bilbao forward Nico Williams. MailOnline reported that Villa would have to pay a £50 million break clause to get the 20-year-old out of Bilbao. Today, I'm joined by Ruairidh Barlow, who is editor at Football Espana. Ruairidh, thanks for coming on. Can you understand why there might be some real interest in Williams from Aston Villa?
Yeah, absolute pleasure to be on. Thank you very much. And yes, I think Nico Williams is probably one of the most exciting talents in La Liga. It's no surprise that Villa are linked with him. It wouldn't be a surprise to me to see the likes of Chelsea. Well, Chelsea, who are they not linked with these days? But it wouldn't be a surprise for me to see him linked with any of sort of the biggest names in the Premier League and Villa as well, because he's not the perfect player. He's not particularly rounded as a footballer just yet, but you can see in those moments that he's got that little bit of something about him that can break a game open, that can sort of break down a really packed defense, that can give you that moment of inspiration, get you that goal, and yeah, win you games. Essentially, he has got that in him, which is the rarest quality in football, and it's the one that's hardest to find. And yeah, particularly in Spain, it's sort of rare to come by a sort of Spanish player that comes through with that kind of ability to beat a player. So it's no surprise to me that he's been linked with big money moves, and that Premier League sides in particular are hot on his trail.
Okay, well, he's only 20, but he has already played quite a lot of games for Bilbao. This season, he scored 7 goals in 26 games, which is a marked improvement on previous seasons. How would you say he's grown this year?
Yeah, well, he's taken a step, I think. I think last year he was pretty much an impact substitute. He would come on sort of with games a wee bit stretched. They'd look for the last half hour of his pace in behind the defence, that kind of thing. And he was more limited to kind of the wide areas, I would have said. I think he had a bit more of a defined role under Marcelino Garcia Toral, who left last season. Mm-hmm. Now he's under Ernesto Valverde, who I mean, at Barcelona, he weirdly had a reputation for being defensive, because that's kind of how he adapted to his resources. But in general, Valverde is a manager that likes to let attacking players express themselves. He likes to give them a bit of freedom to kind of work things out themselves. And so you saw, particularly, even just last weekend, he scored a brilliant goal against Valencia. He kind of ripped through the defense, right through the middle, kind of come in. He was having a hard enough time against Jose Gaya, who's Spain left back, and is very good. So they were having a good sort of ding-dong battle. And so he moves inside for this one move, beats 2-3 defenders, and then kind of gets through this gap, because the gap's kind of closing. It's very sort of film style, as you're kind of sliding under that door that's closing, and you grab your hat just in time. That was kind of Nico Williams in between the Valencia defense, kind of slips it under the goalkeeper as well. And he's got that kind of burst of pace that's so electric, that's so hard to stop, and he's got a good sort of mind of how to use it. So yeah, how has he grown? He's taken that step into the next level. He's now more or less a starter most of the time, I'd say, for Ernesto Valverde, and I think he's one of the key players for Athletic Club nowadays.
Okay, well, he's also a Spain international. He's played a fair few games for them already and scored 1 goal. How high do you think his ceiling potentially could be?
It's a good question, actually, because as I say, he has a special something. So it's about kind of building out his game around that. And he's a smart enough footballer. He knows what he's doing on the pitch. He knows kind of where his strengths lie and how to use them and how to hurt the opposition. Mm-hmm. Do I think he could become sort of an all-encompassing footballer, like in the same sense that you have players like Eden Hazard who could dribble, who could kind of do it all, and kind of ended up just basically being a 10/ wherever you want to play, because wherever you're best is going to make us the best team that we could be. Do I see Nico Williams becoming that kind of player? Probably not. I think he's probably going to be, I say limited, that's a sort of cruel adjective for him here. He should be on the kind of wider side of the front three, I think, or even a 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1. I think he should always occupy those wide areas, but I definitely think he could make it to the top of the game. I think he could be playing for a Champions League side, wherever he gets to that kind of, Champions League winning kind of level, I don't know, but he has dimensions to him. I wouldn't say he's one-dimensional, but I think he has a game that he's very good at. and I wouldn't want to sort of move him too much out of that, if that makes sense.
Okay, well, yeah, so Villa play a kind of 4-4-2, a fluid 4-4-2, and a 4-2-3-1 under Unai Emery. Emery, of course, been the Spanish manager who recently was at Villarreal, will probably know Nico Williams pretty well. But those, as a wide player, it does sound like he'd probably suit Aston Villa quite well. But obviously, that would be in the Premier League, so it'd be, jumping from one league to another. Do you think he has kind of the attributes to be a success in the Premier League?
Yeah, if anything, I think he's more suited to the Premier League than La Liga. Wow. I mean, you give him those big sort of open spaces to gallop into, and that's him all over, particularly with Unai Emery, I mean, he has a reputation for being slightly standoffish as a manager, in the sense that like he's going to sit off teams a little bit more and give his teams a bit more space to attack into. And you kind of saw that with Nico Jackson, the way he used him at Villarreal. He was kind of really gave him the space to run into and worked on his movement quite a lot. I think if Nico Williams was to join Villa and join Unai Emery would make him a more rounded player. He'd kind of tidy up some of those raw areas of his game. But I think he'd suit him down to the ground, because if there's something that Unai Emery likes, it's quick players in behind. You saw Danjuma as well, another player who's been linked with Premier League sides. He really does have a talent for exploiting those players and getting the best out of them. Even Yeremy Pino, who doesn't quite have the physical attributes that Danjuma, Jackson, or Nico Williams has, but he managed to sort of really, in terms of movement and in terms of positioning, ensuring that they're in the right place to exploit those talents. That's where Unai Emery really excelled. So I think he could fit Villa very well, it has to be said. But I think there's also few teams that he wouldn't fit, if that also kind of tallies.
No, it definitely does. And do you think there'll be sort of other interest in him from, not just Aston Villa, but other, probably quite major clubs as well, maybe even as high as Champions League clubs?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think, especially with these players, once they get on a run and once they sort of, that kind of hype machine starts going and starts rolling, then it's very difficult to stop. And I think he's probably maybe a run of sort of 5 goals and 5 assists in 20 games or so. I think he's not far from those teams really sort of perking up and taking notice of him. The fact that he's obviously a Spanish international as well, that makes a big difference. And I think so Villa, in terms of competition, they could face a lot. I think Athletic Club are notoriously hard to negotiate with as well. Yeah. So that's an issue. So it tends to be kind of release clause or bust with them. And so once you get to that stage, if Villa are willing to pay the release clause, then you're looking at who else is willing to play the release clause as well. And at that point, you're trying to sell your club to him essentially and say, right, well, this is where you should go instead of this place, kind of thing. So yeah, I do think Villa will have competition, and I think now is probably the right time to go for him. I wouldn't leave it any later if I was Villa, if you're gonna spend that money, because I could see it skyrocketing into the biggest clubs.
Wow. Okay. So, and also just quickly, is he also you mentioned that he's a counter-attacking player, but you also mentioned earlier that he's good at his skills, and I saw that goal against Valencia he scored at the weekend, which was really good. Is he also one of them players that if a team is defending deep against you, can he still be very useful, as somebody who can break down a defence?
Yeah, he doesn't need massive amounts of space to get around a player. He does have enough of a kind of close control and quick footwork to kind of beat a player in a small, tight space.
Okay.
Which I think is, again, what makes him a bit more valuable than just kind of a flyer where you just kind of let them go into space and they knock it around a player. Like he has enough kind of about him to jink in between players, to play sort of 1 or 2 touches. And the advantage of playing for Spain and in Spain is that he's kind of used to those deep defenses, but he's also used to having to play with players. He's used to having to touch it off, get it back, kind of thing. He's not been kind of one-dimensionalized into that kind of role of just run at people. I mean, that is his main attribute. That's where he's explosive. But you look at the likes of Oyan Sanset, Iker Muniain, players that are providing for him. Those are players that are really, they have that kind of sort of golden touch, and they can just weight a ball into path. And so Nico Williams is learning from them as well. And if anything, he has his brother to kind of learn off, who Iñaki, I love him to bits. He's a great guy and a quite good footballer, but he does have his limitations, and that's where the kind of difference is between the two, because Nico has a bit more touch and a bit more technical quality.
Okay. Was it Inaki Williams who scored on his debut when he was 16, was it? Or am I dreaming that?
Munyain scored when he was very young. Iñaki also very young. They've both been around for over a decade now, and they're
Yeah.
still only in their like mid to late 20s. So
Mad, isn't it? Yeah, I remember him
yeah.
coming through and doing that. It's crazy how long they've been around. But just as a final question, I guess, it's very difficult to sort of predict and crystal ball how anyone's ever going to do. But let's imagine a scenario in which he did end up joining Aston Villa. I don't know how well you know the Aston Villa squad itself, but if you did join Villa and work with Unai Emery, do you think there's that could be a successful relationship?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think Unai Emery, he'll know him sort of inside out, more or less. Unai Emery is one of the most kind of diligent managers around in terms of kind of scouting and ensuring that he's on top of the stats. So he'll know Nico Williams inside out. He's obviously been at Villarreal for nearly 2.5 seasons there. So he'll be used to Nico Williams and what he can do. Nico Williams against Villarreal would have come up against Alfonso Pedraza and the likes of Alberto Moreno. So those are both quick players, but both players that he still had success against. And I think, yeah, there's so much quality and so much kind of pace there that Unai Emery will know exactly how he wants to use him and how he can get the best out of him. I think, yeah, if I was to type Nico out, which I don't want to do because I do quite like Athletic Club, but yeah, Unai Emery would be sort of a really nice landing spot for him in the sense that Villa will be somewhere where he can win his place in the side, and Unai Emery will be somewhere that can, yeah, as I say, kind of is not necessarily a finishing school, but he does improve players kind of as their kind of overall picture, I'd say.
Okay, brilliant. Well, Ruairidh, thank you very much. That's been incredibly informative. And I feel like I know a lot more about Nico Williams already, just from what you told me there. So thank you very much. Before we go, where can people find you online?
Pleasure was all mine, it has to be said. Yeah, good luck for the rest of the season to you and the Villa fans. If you want to find us online, go to at Ruairidh Barlow is my Twitter handle, just RURI Barlow as you'd expect it. And Football Espana is where I work. So yeah, head over there for the Spanish football news if you so desire.